I recently came across the announcement for the new Avatar movie, and that immediately took me down nostalgia lane, reminding me of the time where I would binge the show for hours after school. Now, since my two favorite hobbies are playing Pokémon and imagining unrealistic scenarios where I somehow gained the ability to control the elements, I picked up my console and booted up Pokémon Heart Gold. The goal of today's challenge is to become champion while playing as one of the 4 different nations from the show. Each of them has a set of types assigned to it. I ultimately ended up picking the Earth Nation, which means that I'm only allowed to use Pokémon whose primary or secondary type is either Ground, Rock, Steel, or Fighting. To make it even harder though, I also made this challenge a hardcore nuzlocke following the rule set on screen right now. Hi, I'm Ryo. I like to make Pokémon games harder than they have to be, and this is my attempt at a hardcore Avatar nuzlocke of Pokémon Heart Gold. Let's see how it went. This story, equal to its cartoon counterpart, starts off in a peaceful coastal village in the middle of nowhere. Oh, I should mention that the last time I watched Avatar was probably 15 years ago. Most of the things I will reference here are either spoilers or so far off the original plotline that Nickelodeon would make a whole new season out of it. Just like Aang, I woke up from a cozy 100-year slumber on the bedroom floor of a middle-aged woman. With some open questions to answer, she sends me straight to the head of the village, Professor Elm. He tells me the story of a chosen child, the Avatar, that went missing when the world needed him the most, and that I could be the one who they were looking for this entire time. Accepting of my fate, I listen to the wise men tell me everything that I have to know to fulfill my destiny. Their land has been occupied by the Fire Nation. Each of the 8 major cities was controlled by a general that I had to get rid of. To defeat them, the man hands me something called a Pokémon. Apparently they can bend elements with their minds, and I can bend them by simply telling them what to do. Great, seems simple enough. Since I was napping for about 100 years, my power of controlling these little creatures is limited to the ones from the Earth Nation only. Don't question it. All alone, I wandered off to my journey of freeing this foreign land. While leaving town, I stumbled over a young man spying on the professor, and I would very quickly come to discover that this fella is out for my head. His name? Zuko. Luckily, I chose the professor's guard badger to protect me until I can assemble my own team, otherwise things would already be over for me. My first destination was a small town nearby. There was no way I could take its general out without a Pokémon of my own, and so I picked up a friend right outside of its gates in the dark cave. Meet Haru, the Geodude. Inside of Violet Town, I got recognized by a stranger who offered me another Pokémon in exchange for playing a little game with him. It was called Guess 4 Random Words out of a billion different combinations. I kept trying for several hours until the man just handed me an egg if I promised to never come back. This is how I met Sokka the Wooper. While scouring the market, I also overheard an old man offering an onyx in exchange for some weeds found right outside of town. I immediately rushed to grab them, and with that, welcomed Bami the Onyx to my small group of rocky friends. He wasn't amazing, but if there was one thing he was really good at, it had to be throwing rocks. I felt ready to take on General Faulkner. He was by far the weakest of the 8, and his entire team consisted of 2 birds who were both weak to rock types. Together with my Pebble, my Rock Snake, and this squishy Axolotl, I scaled the tower the first villain was hiding in and challenged him to a battle over life and getting banished to the Shadow Realm, or something. He starts the battle off with his Pidgey, and I bring out Onyx. Without even flinching once, Bami launches a rock at Faulkner's pet, taking it out in 1 hit. Next up was his second, a little bit bigger bird. Onyx then decided to ignore my command for some reason, and thus failed to use Rock Throw before tanking a gust in return. That must have made him very angry, because he went back to his old self straight away and started throwing pebbles for a sizable amount of damage. On the next turn, he decided that Tackle was the better option, and after that, finally listens again and takes Faulkner's last Pokémon out with a Rock Throw. So much about controlling them by telling them what to do, huh? But hey, this is the first of 8 generals down. If this is all the Fire Nation has to offer, I'm through in no time. I was told to meet up with a tipster in the town's apothecary once Faulkner was defeated. He gave me the directions to the second village I needed to visit. It wasn't too far from here, and so I immediately made my way there. My journey led through the Union Cave, where I noticed a member of the Fire Nation keeping a little mole-like creature in a cage. I defeated the man, freed the small animal, and she was so happy about her release that she wanted to join my cause. Meet Toph, the Sandshrew. The rest of my travels to Azalea went by without any incidents. It was only right outside of the crafty forest town that I stumbled over other villains once again. They were clearly up to something, but I couldn't just expose myself like that. Some friendly faces in the town's smithy then told me about the Fire Nation using the slowpokes in the area as a steady food supply for their nearby soldiers. This was the perfect opportunity for me to strike. I made my way into the well and took every single one of their guards out one by one. The battle sounds immediately riled up the guards in town and also grabbed the attention of General Bugsy. Similar to Faulkner, his entire team had nothing to resist my stone-cold friends. With the city in turmoil, I took the chance to infiltrate his hideout filled with creepy crawlers, where it was time for another showdown. First up was Cypher into Bami, who by now had made himself a name to be the best rock thrower of the region. After getting his defenses lowered by a Leer, the Myth shows off his skill and brings his opponent down to the yellow with a single hit. A held Citrus Berry then recovers some health, but Cypher was already stun-locked by Onyx's impressive display of skill and so quickly went down to another rock throw. The rest of Buxy's team has no effective way of dealing any significant damage to Bami, and so they too fell to a barrage of precisely thrown pebbles. I probably wasn't careful enough with hiding my identity, because right as I wanted to leave town towards my next destination, Zuko catches me off guard and challenges me to a battle. He mumbled something about having stolen one of the professor's guard pets, and the moment I saw his team approaching, I noticed what danger I was in. His Ghastly and Zubat shouldn't be too big of an issue to deal with, but his Croconaw on the other hand had a 4x super effective water gun ready to hose my entire team into oblivion. Luckily, I quickly found an answer to this feral alligator. After watching Ghastly take itself out with a curse, Zuko brings in his Croconaw next, which threatens Bami with a one-hit KO. What my rival wasn't prepared for was that Sokka happened to have the water absorbability. This means that instead of dealing damage, water moves will simply heal him. I sent a little squishy guy into the field and could damage the crocodile with a slam, and once Wooper was low, I switched into any other Pokemon to tank an attack. This in return baited Water Gun, allowing me to bring Sokka back in for a free heal. As long as Zuko doesn't stack up on team members and actively tries to outsmart me, this should pretty much trivialize all the battles against him. Anyway, with my rival defeated, I moved on to the first major city of the adventure. It was heavily guarded, which would make infiltrating it an almost impossible task. The people of Azalea also warned me that the Goldenrod General is known to be among the fiercest of them all. Even with 2 Pokemon that resist her Milk Tank's stat-boosted Stomp, Whitney was known to seduce her challengers with both Q-Charm and Attract. RNG from Metronome and Flinches also can become a showstopper from 1 second to the next. I didn't want to take on such a big challenge unprepared. Luckily, while traveling through the Ilex forest, I came across this confused stranger slamming his head into trees over and over. While that definitely can't be healthy, I decided to take a page out of his book and slam Sokka's head against the tree as well. I didn't really have a goal in mind when doing this, so believe me when I tell you that I was just as surprised as you are when Pineco fell out. It would make for a great addition to the team, and so it just blew up. Despite pine cones exploding left and right, my travel companions and I made it through the forest in one piece. On the path leading up to Goldenrod, we also happened to come across this cabbage merchant. With the Fire Nation occupying the city, his business was practically ruined, forcing him to leave. Hearing of my plans to defeat Whitney, he was willing to smuggle our group beyond castle walls inside his cart. Once there, he handed me one of his trusted Machop to aid my cause. Meet Kiyoshi. She had the Guts ability, which boosts her attack if she was affected by a status condition. It took me a while to find a place to activate it, but I eventually came across this Fire Nation guard and his Will-O-Wisp Vulpix close to the city gates. As an added bonus, my friend was also completely immune to all of Whitney's flirtatious strategies. With that, all that was left to do was to free Goldenrod from the Fire Nation's grasp. I brought Kiyoshi out into the General's Clefairy. In order to increase my chances with her ace, I went for a Focus Energy, all while the pink star-shaped blob barely touched Machop with a double slap in return. A single Karate Chop then sends Clefairy straight back to its Pokeball, which now brings out Whitney's unholy Miltank. Kiyoshi had one shot, or one opportunity, to seize everything she ever wanted, but takes too much damage from a Stomp and gets flinched in the process. Since I didn't want to risk losing her right away, I was forced to switch into Haru. He tanks an attack on the switch and immediately gets infatuated with Attract before breaking through and hitting a strong Magnitude. This brings Miltank into the yellow but leaves it right outside of healing range. After being immobilized by Love in a flinch for good measure, Haru lands a soft Magnitude, bringing Miltank down to its liver. That unfortunately causes Whitney to heal her ace back to full with a Super Potion. Luckily, Haru then pulled through and landed a Magnitude 10, evening the odds once more. His love for the cow was strong, but not stronger than his love for freedom, and so he dodged the flinch and infatuation one last time, bringing it home with only 4 HP left. After so many years, Goldenrod was finally free. With 3 generals defeated, the news about my journey started spreading, and so even more Pokemon wanted to join my cause. Meet Suki and Boulder, fraternal twins, that I unfortunately could not use just yet. Lucky for me, the habitants of Goldenrod were hosting celebratory games just outside of the city, where I was able to win enough times to pick up 2 Moonstones. Since the twins were extremely similar, I decided to evolve and add Suki to the team first, while keeping Boulder as a backup. Before heading out towards Ekritik, a lady handed me a watering can that would allow me to reach the city much faster. You see, to disrupt the Fire Nation, the people of Goldenrod secretly blocked the path with a rock Pokémon that adapted to look like a tree. The only way to move it was water. From an evolutionary perspective, it doesn't really make too much sense to look like a tree while also hating water, but okay. While trying to catch this little fella, I used Bommy to slowly chip away on its health 1 HP at a time, and thinking nothing could go wrong anyway, that is, when things went wrong. Remember kids, never trust a rock disguised as a tree. Bami's loss also marks the first death of the run. Fortunately, I was still able to catch the Sudowoodo, and so I immediately welcomed Iro to the team. To pay my respects to Bami, I also had Sokka headbutt 30 more trees until another Paineko fell out. This time around, I managed to catch the little gal before she blew up. Say hello to Poppy. From there, it was a quick jump to Ekritik, where my next opponent was already waiting for me. To stop the rebellion, General Morty burnt down one of the city's most precious landmarks. It is now known as the Burnt Tower. My initial thought was that his team would be extremely scary to take on, since Morty's Pokémon mainly used annoying status moves. I was quickly proven wrong by Suki, because if I delayed her evolution to level 21, she learns Bite, which was my saving grace for this challenge. Iro also gets access to Feint Attack, which now gives me some options to switch around as well. After evolving, I gave my blue Dino Queen the Moonstone from earlier. While fighting through Morty's grunts, Toph, Haru, and Sokka gained enough experience to evolve as well. With that, I had nothing left to do but to head straight into the battle against the General. I brought Suki out into Ghastly, who immediately gets taken out by a bite. Haunter was next, but since I outspeed, the Frail Ghost follows its pre-evolution's fate right away. Third was Gengar, and we now have successfully seen the entire line. It was faster, and so hit a Shadow Ball for around 40% of Suki's HP before getting crit into the red. My opponent's Citrus Berry then healed it out of potion range, which means after getting nailed by a mean look, another bite takes Nidoqueen's kill count up to 3. Last came Haunter. It unfortunately survived an attack on 1 HP before bringing Suki into the yellow with a Nightshade. Morty was going to heal now, and since I don't want to be greedy, I decided to send out Iro for his debut battle. From there, a Feint Attack was enough to seal the deal and eliminate the 4th General. Nice, half of the cities were liberated. Since Ekritik is located in a very central trading position, I was now able to access a lot more routes and locations. While traveling through them, 2 new members joined the group. Meet Appa the Mankey and Azula the Magnemite. With the entire middle section of the land liberated, it was now in my best interest to free the other remaining cities to the west first. Some wandering merchants in Ekritik mentioned something about the Olivine General Jasmine being very alarmed about my quest. I was told she was hiding in the city's tallest building. To lure her out, I had to hatch a plan. I figured if I could pretend to be Zuko, I could earn her trust. Once that was done, I needed to travel across the ocean, defeat the Cyanwood General, and get him to sign a letter that would give Jasmine a false sense of security. If everything goes well, this would ultimately entice her back into her hideout. Just roll with it. Part 1 of my plan worked perfectly, as I simply pretended to be a below-average Pokemon trainer while making sure Jasmine was watching. It then didn't take too long for me to reach the coastal village. On a first glance, getting through the second part of my plan looked very dire. General Chuck's fighting style was based around stacking evasion boosts with Double Team and then dish out incredibly hard hits with Focus Punch. Almost my entire team was weak to that, and so if I could not find a way around it, he could easily end my journey right here. Fortunately, in this case, the problem was also the solution. Due to Focus Punch being a 150 base power move, it had to be balanced in some way. Because of that, its secondary effect is that it has negative priority and will always fail if the user gets hit by an attack in the same turn. All I needed to do was to find a way around the evasion boosts. I looked through my tiny army of ground-based animals and quickly found what I needed. Oh, before I forget, while preparing for the upcoming battle, both Mankey and Magnemite grew strong enough to evolve. Let's face General Chuck in the ring. Appa's relative was up first as I matched the Raging Monkey with Azula. Primeape then went for the expected double team, and all I had to do was to click Magnet Bomb to entirely ignore Chuck's attempt to set up. The reason why this works is because Magnet Bomb bypasses the accuracy check and thus always connects. With that, after a few turns, Primeape went down without dealing any damage in return. Last came Chuck's ace Polygraph. Since I was faster, I tested my luck and went for a Thunder Wave, which connects and paralyzes the wrestling tadpole before it can retaliate with a Surf for about 50% of my HP. With Azula now below half, it was straight into Sokka as Poliwrath was unable to move. An incoming Body Slam unfortunately paralyzed him straight away, making this entire battle a game of RNG. I either hit a headbutt to cancel the Focus Punch, or get paralyzed and could potentially lose a team member. I went for the risky play and brought out Appa, who almost gets one-shot on the switch. I was now in a really awkward position. To get out of it, I then decided to use Suki to pivot back into Sokka. she luckily survived the focus punch on the switch. Thanks to some incredible RNG rolls, Quagsire was able to connect with 3 headbutts in a row, winning me the battle and completing the first part of my elaborate plan to defeat Jasmine. I made sure to get the required letter from the defeated general and crossed the ocean to finally free Olivine City. Jasmine fell for the plan immediately, to a point where even her guards would just let me walk up to her. Her team had to be one of the easiest ones I had to take on so far, and thus required little to no planning. Without wasting any time, I approached and challenged her to a fight. Wait. Before we jump into one of the easiest battles of my journey, can we just appreciate how cute Appa's overworld sprite looks? Look at this little cutie. Who's the tiny little angry monkey? That's right, you are! Okay, well, back to Jasmine. The surprised general sends out her Magnemite first. A critical hit Karate Chop then takes the electric steel ball out and brings the following one into the red as well. This allowed my opponent to retaliate with a Thunder Wave, who left Appa unable to move for 2 turns. Since a single Thunderbolt was also enough to get her into the yellow, I decided to switch her out for Kiyoshi, who took care of Jasmine's second Pokemon with a Karate Chop. Last came Steelix, but its terrible special defense allowed Sokka to take it out with 2 consecutive Surf. Jasmine was defeated, and with that, there were only 2 more cities left to save. But the upcoming battles were going to be the hardest ones yet. Before heading there though, I wanted to visit a small town that was so far out that it was untouched by war. It was home to many Pokemon that could not be found anywhere else in the region. This is where I came across Bolin the Diglett. Together with the rest of the group, I made sure to get to Mahogany as quickly as I possibly could. Out of all the villages and cities I have been to so far, this had to be the trickiest to conquer. It was heavily guarded and filled to the brim with hostile forces. This was the first time I felt like I could not do this on my own. I needed help. That was the moment when I remembered one of the many stories the professor told me about. Atop Mahogany, in a lake amidst the mountains, resides a fiery serpent. It was told to be the Pokemon of a deserted Fire Nation general who despises what his once lawful and proud people had turned into. If the legend was true, and if I could find him, maybe there was a way to free Mahogany. Together with my trusted companions, I climbed the mountaintops and would not believe my own eyes as I gazed upon the shiny Gyarados. Not long after proving myself worthy by defeating it, the deserted Fire Nation General Lance stepped in to join my cause after lurking in the shadows for so many years. It was his chance to right his wrongs. Without hesitation, we returned to the occupied village and cleared out every single soldier, including the 2 low-ranking commanders, Petrel and Ariana. They stood no chance against Lance's wrath. There was only one person left to beat: Price. Defeating him was going to be my final test to make sure I had what it takes to end this war. Full of confidence, I walked into the frozen chambers and challenged him to a battle. I started off with Azula against his Seal. A Thunder Shock brought the Sea Puppy down to about 0%, which then immediately leads into Price's ace next. I switched into Sokka, who tanked a Mud Bomb pretty well, and after a Blizzard, nails his opponent with a Yawn. On the next turn, I went into Appa, who gets hit by a Blizzard for a huge chunk of damage straight away. With the frozen pile of hair now asleep, Primeape was able to land a critical hit Karate Chop, bringing his opponent into Citrus range, allowing her to pick up another KO right after. Last for Price was Dugong, and so it was back into Azula. To prevent this obnoxious Seal from stalling my team with rest, I made sure to paralyze it with Thunder Wave right away, before taking it out with 2 more Thunder Shocks. With that, Price was also sent to the Shadow Realms, and there was only one general left. I really thought things went well so far. That is when one of the professor's messengers found me and informed me that Goldenrod was under attack. The Fire Nation was trying to take back the land by storm. While the last general was only an icy path away, I could not give up on the people who trusted me. I rushed to their aid as fast as I possibly could. Zuko, Commander Petrel, Proton, and Ariana all fell like they had done so before. But they were not the ones in charge. That was Archer. He was amongst the fiercest warriors of their nation and had yet to lose a battle ever since he picked up his first Pokeball. But he was no match for me. His Houndour and Coughing quickly went down, leaving only his Houndoom left on the field. I brought in Sokka, one of my strongest companions, to take care of this menacing Hellhound. Right as he hits the field, he gets crushed by a critical hit Firefang, and before he could move, got taken out by another crit from Feint Attack. I was there when he saw his first ray of sunshine, and when he got to see his last. Rest in peace, my squishy friend. Full of rage, Toph came in and took Houndoom out with a single dig. The siege was over, and Goldenrod was free once more. But at what cost? That was it. The Fire Nation had to be stopped. I was not going to rest until the people of this land could live in harmony once again. That means not only defeating the last general, but taking out all of its leaders in the capital as well. After leaving the city, some of the strongest warriors this nation had seen joined my cause. Katara the Corsola, Momo the Heracross, and Mako the Swinub were all ready to bring this to an end. While getting into Blackthorn City was one of the easier endeavors due to an unguarded frozen path leading directly into it, taking out the final general would prove to be the hardest challenge yet. Without Sokka, Claire's dragons were well equipped to deal with a huge part of my team. Her Dragonairs alone already had Fire Blast for Fortress and Aqua Tail for everyone else. On top of that, the General was leading with one of the best Pokémon there is, and her ace was just waiting to dish out sniper boosted crits with Hyper Beam or Hydro Pump. I looked at so many different strategies, and all of them involved a sacrifice in one way or another. I could not find a way through this until it eventually hit me. Heracross, who until now wasn't even on my radar, had the Guts ability. It was extremely broken, but there was another thing I needed to get through this. Momo was currently way too slow and too weak to have a fighting chance. A short training montage against Wild Krabbis and Rattatas raised her EVs just enough so she would be able to do the necessary work to bring it home. There now was nothing that could stop me from taking on the final general. Up first was Azalea into Claire's Gyarados. The odds seemed to be in my favor because a held Quick Claw immediately activates, allowing my 3-headed Steel Cyclops to KO its opponent with a single 4 times effective discharge. Up next was Dragonair, and this is where I had to either take a risky switch or sacrifice one of my team members to safely secure a victory. The goal was to bring Heracross onto the field, but a crit would mean that she would not have enough HP to take all the 3 remaining Pokémon out. So with a heavy heart, I sent Iro in and slowly watched him crumble under Dragonair's barrage of attacks. This heroic sacrifice meant that I could now bring Momo in, and with one close combat each, Dragonair, the following Kingdra, and the final Pool Noodle all went down without a fighting chance. All cities of Johto were freed from the Fire Nation's grasp, but my journey wasn't going to end here. To ensure lasting peace, I needed to take their leaders out for good. While their army was weakened from the Goldenrod siege, everyone at the Fire Nation capital was still supplied by an almost endless stream of power through the legendary Phoenix Pokémon. If I ever wanted a fighting chance, I needed to take it down first. Together with my strongest companions, I scaled the bell tower in Ekritique, summoned the beast with the help of the Kimono Sisters, and took it out. This was my moment to strike. I traveled through harsh terrain, leaving countless defeated soldiers in my wake. Nothing could stop me now. Not even Zuko, who even without Sokka failed miserably in his final attempt to defeat me. After easily disposing of his entire team, I clawed my way to the Fire Nation capital and into the castle all their powerless leaders retreated to. The companions I brought to defeat them were the fiercest Pokémon I had ever seen. It was an honor to fight by their side. With me was Suki, Azula, Haru, Mako, Katara, and Momo. All 6 fully evolved and perfectly equipped to deal with the battles ahead. I took one last breath and approached this final challenge. Welcome to Momo and Azula's guide on how to sweep an entire Elite Four with only 2 Pokémon. My first challenger was Psychic Leader Will. He starts the battle off with his Xatu, but that didn't really matter, as a Guts boosted Shadow Claw finishes it and its following double in one hit. Jinx then also went down to a single Brick Break. Next came Slowbro, and so I switched into Azula on a resisted Psychic. From there, a Magnet boosted Discharge was enough to pick up a KO, which leaves Will with only his Executor left on the field. Azula was able to dodge a Hypnosis and immediately paralyze its opponent with a Thunder Wave. 3 attempts of hitting a Supersonic later, and Executor was now also confused. This allowed Mako to join the fight and finish it off with 2 Icy Winds after a Confusion self-hit. 1 down. Up next was Poison Leader Koga. Well, he also has a lot of bugs, so I actually don't really know what his game plan is. Anyway, Ariados was up first. An Aerial Ace easily takes care of this extremely cute spider, which forces Koga to send out his ace second. Once again, it was Azula's turn to clean up. After tanking a wing attack on the switch, a discharge connects through Double Team and snipes the Crobat out of the sky. This baits out Fortress next, who sets up a layer of Toxic Spikes on a hard switch into Momo before getting deleted by a close combat. Okay, before almost getting deleted by a close combat. Predicting a full restore, I went for a weaker Brick Break to offset Fortress health, which then allowed me to pick up a guaranteed KO. The following Venomoth falls to a super effective Aerial Ace. Last for the Poison Leader was his Muck, and so it was back into Azula once again. Since the Pile of Goo only has Poison type moves to attack me, which can't hit Steel types, Magneton was able to freely fire away with discharges, eventually taking its opponent out. The Fire Nation's resources seemed to dwindle. My third opponent was Fighting Leader Bruno, and every Pokémon on his team was like a leaf in the wind. Hitmontop, Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan all crumbled under 1 Aerial Ace each. Machamp was up 4th and survived the attack in the red before getting healed by a Citrus Berry and retaliating with a strong Rock Slide. Luckily Momo held on, and from there was able to pick up a KO before she was too low to stay in. I was pretty sure her close combat would kill, but didn't want to risk anything at this point. Especially because I have so many other options to deal with this. To keep it safe, I switched into Zuki, who after tanking a Rock Slide, takes Bruno's remaining Pokémon out with a Surf. It all came down to beating Dark Leader Karen. But even the strongest Fire Nation leader's team was no match for mine. Umbreon, Houndoom and Murkrow went down to a close combat, and Gengar got KO'd by a Shadow Claw after only hitting a Spite. The last Pokémon to beat was Karen's Vileplume. It survived an Aerial Ace on a Sliver, allowing it to get in enough damage with Petal Dance that the following Poison Tick left Momo with exactly 1 HP on the board. My greed could have almost gone sideways here. I obviously had to switch, and my choice fell on Suki. Karen for some reason refused to use Full Restore, so one Sludge Bomb later, everything was over. Each and every one of the generals and leaders was defeated. The Fire Nation could finally start living in harmony with the others. The wind around the castle was calm, almost too calm. The moment I approached the throne room, I looked up and could not believe my eyes. Surrounded by his dragons, Lance was sitting on the throne looking down at me. They didn't want to hear the truth. Why conquer cities when you can just burn them to the ground? The legends got it all wrong. He did not escape the Fire Nation. He was exiled, and by defeating everyone that could stop him, I delivered the throne on a silver platter. He betrayed every nation in this land, including his own. This maniac had to be stopped, now or never. Lance leads the battle with his Gyarados, and I matched that with Azula. The glorified Magikarp was faster and hit Magneton for about 40% with a Waterfall before getting KO'd with a single discharge. This brings out Charizard next. A switch into Haru would most likely be the smartest choice here, but I didn't want to risk a burn from a Fire Fang. I decided to let Azula go down to get a safe switch into Golem. After tanking an Air Slash, a 4x super effective Rock Throw connects and takes Charizard out in one hit. This one is for you, Bami. Lance then unleashed the first of his 3 Dragonites. The powerful dragon strikes with a 70% accurate Blizzard, which Haru luckily survived thanks to a Help Yashi Berry, allowing him to deal some damage with a Rock Throw in return. I tried to get in more chip damage, but Lance got lucky once again and hits with a second Blizzard, marking the end of my oldest companion. It was time to bring Katara onto the field. She survived the Dragon Rush in the yellow before setting up Hail and going down to another attack. This is all she had to do. With the weather in place, I could now switch into Suki, who is guaranteed to survive at least one of Dragonite's attacks. After being brought down to the yellow, a Choice Specs boosted Blizzard was enough to take out not only one, but 2 of Lance's mighty beasts. His 3rd and final Dragonite was up 5th, but unfortunately outspeeds and finishes Suki off with a Dragon Rush. Things were not looking great for me. My last hope was to bring out Momo. Due to her being poisoned, I wanted to avoid getting Dragonite into healing range, and so went for a Shadow Claw. This is a great example that crits usually happen when the world needs them the least, and so the attack hits the roll, leaving my opponent with 30% HP left on the field. Momo then survives the incoming Dragon Rush, before finishing Dragonite with another Shadow Claw. Lance was down to his last Pokémon. It was way faster, and in order to not risk any unnecessary damage on Mako, I let the greatest hero of this story fall as well. It was down to a 1 versus 1. I was sure to survive a hit or two, but knowing Lance still had a set of full restores in the back, I needed to play this out very carefully. After taking a little less than 50% from a Rock Slide, an Icy Wind connects to get in some chip damage. This should be enough to offset Aerodactyl's health from getting into healing range. On the next turn, a priority Ice Shard unfortunately barely misses out on the kill, as another Rock Slide leaves Mako with 16 HP on the board. Lance now goes for the dreaded full restore, and with that, things were as good as over. I might as well call Nurse Joy. But not for me. In the last moments of the battle, when everything seemed lost, Mako does not only high roll an Ice Shard, but also crits another for a guaranteed win. Lance was defeated, and the Fire Nation was finally free. And that's it. I really loved coming up with this story, and I hope you all enjoyed it too. The challenge itself was extremely interesting to play, and there are 3 potential other nations to pick, so make sure to let me know in the comments down below if you want to see more of this. I am super excited for Scarlet and Violet, and have a ton of new video ideas for you. Until then, feel free to check out my other Nuzlocke videos, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.